Welcome everyone, and thank you for taking time out to join us this afternoon and this morning for our friends in Western Australia. It's good to have you all here. I want to start by saying thank you to our state associations for partnering with us in presenting this webinar, and also for allowing us access to the industry shows that we work with them on. You'll see why that's important as we get into our presentation. Just a reminder, if you could keep your mute function on while we're talking, and just save that for when you actually want to ask a question. It's going to make things flow a lot more easier. Today's webinar is based on data that we've gathered throughout last year, 2025, through a series of vehicle inspections that were conducted. Some of those were at individual businesses, some of them were at the industry shows around the country, and conducted by our RVMAP team or by Bill Thiel, who I will introduce properly in a minute. So I just wanted to point out that these inspections were internal to industry, and the information that was shared with you was done so on that basis. However, some of the areas we're going to talk about today are becoming of interest to the technical regulators in the various jurisdictions. So while at the moment everything we're talking about here has been operating just within industry and between us and you, that may not be the case indefinitely. There's a couple of areas of focus that we're going to present today, and they've been determined out of all those inspections we did. A number of things are flagged as recurring issues, and they fall into a couple of categories. The obvious one is safety concerns, things that represent safety issues within the gas installations. I don't need to tell any of you that when the gas system goes wrong, it can go very badly wrong very quickly. So obviously they are a major area that we want to bring before you. There are some other items that are of interest to the Gas Technical Regulators Committee, and that is a committee that is formed up of all of the technical regulators in each of your jurisdictions, and anything that is on their radar is what is likely to become the subject of defect notices and regulatory action. So we all want to avoid that. So there are a couple of those items that we will be highlighting. So anything you see in the presentation that mentions the GTRC, that's what we're talking about there. And in addition to that, there are a number of items we've found that are perhaps not terribly bad in the sense of being risky or in the sense of necessarily being on the radar of the regulators, but they are occurring really frequently. So if you see something in the presentation that you think, oh, that seems a bit of a trivial issue, it might be because, yes, it's potentially a smaller issue, but we're seeing it a lot more among the inspections. So there's these three areas that we've put together to develop some areas of focus that we will be presenting you today. Just a final reminder too, all of the reference material for what we're presenting today is drawn from the ASNZS 5601.2 Australian Standard, which is the gas installations in caravans and boats. That is our key standard that is mandated in all the states for compliance of gas installations. So that's the background to what we're presenting today. It's my pleasure to introduce, I probably don't need to introduce Bill to all of you, but Bill Thiel is our resident expert on gas installations and many other things from his vast experience in the caravan industry, and particularly with RV appliances and gas installations in context of this presentation. Bill is our standards representative on the AG6 committee, which among its other responsibilities develops and maintains the 5601.2 standard, which is our key compliance standard, and Bill's acted in that role for over 10 years now, so has a wealth of knowledge of the ins and outs of that standard and the workings of that committee. He also represents us on AG1, which is the committee responsible for gas appliances, and has done another 10 odd years on that committee too. And he's more recently been appointed as a liaison between the AG6 Gas Installation Committee and EL5, which is the Battery Energy Storage Committee. So he's acting as a vital eye on the interactions between some of the electrical standards and gas standards, and that's proving to be another really important link for representation of our industry in those spaces. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Bill, who'll be taking the lead for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Anne. It's a little embarrassing to hear you praised in that way, and I blush a lot higher on my forehead than I used to. Folks, we'll start off with some safety issues.
Oh, could I interrupt you, Bill? There was one important thing I forgot to say, is we do want to invite you as we go through this presentation to ask questions. If you'd like to do that, please either use the raise hand function at the top of your screens, or if you'd like to enter a comment in the chat, and I'll monitor those as we go through. We will also have a question time at the end if you prefer to hold your questions till the end. So keep that in mind as we go on. Sorry, Bill, thanks.
Not a problem. We'll start off with some areas that have been highlighted by the Gas Technical Regulator. And these ones are things that have gone wrong and things that have been tabled at a committee level. So I'll start off with securing of cylinders. How do I know if that's come up on the screen? I guess it has. It's there. That's good. We had a time delay when we were doing our practice.
Looking good.
So it's been noted that a cylinder has actually fallen out of a vehicle when it was secured by a strap. As a result, the Gas Technical Regulator has tabled at the AG6 meeting that they do not feel straps are sufficient to comply with the clause 3.2.1, which says cylinders shall be restrained by attachments designed, constructed and secured in place to withstand a load equal to 4 times the weight of the full cylinder and fittings in all directions. Having a gas cylinder actually fall out of a vehicle and get dragged along by the hose it is the natural end of a good day. You may find if you have vehicles with cylinders secured in this way, particularly it shows you may be challenged by an inspector. As I said, it's been tabled by the Gas Technical Regulator. I think the storms are coming on this one.
Sorry, we've got a question there from Jason. Would you like to go ahead, Jason?
Yeah, hey Anne, it's Ben with Jason as well.
Hello.
Hi, Ben.
Bill, just a question. The bottom picture there, illustration, there's like a plastic bracket in the background there. I know there was a company, I believe it was called Will Secure, that was selling products to install and secure gas cylinders. Now they're rated to hold dive cylinders, some of them. Are they, like if they're going to be a member, is there somewhere they could probably look at what the standard would be for rating wise? Because I believe they still use a strap to secure those, but they must have a rating to secure the dive cylinders and things like that as well.
Yeah, I've got to be right up front honest. I don't know about the ratings. The test is, can you lift the cylinder up and move it round? And I've not found any with the webbing going around the circumference of the cylinder that actually holds it in place. There are other types. You can hold it down from the top. You can secure it with extra bands and extra pieces of kit, but I haven't found any of these that I've tested that have been able to withstand even my rather pathetic armstrings these days. So I'd say assume it doesn't work until you can prove that it does.
No problem. Thanks, mate.
Cool. This has been noted quite recently, but it's come up a lot of times. If you are not aware, 5601.2 has a second amendment to it, and this clause is directly out of Amendment 2. It talks about the ventilation, 50% high, 50% low. None of that has changed. What it does say is that if you're going to cover a lower vent with a for water crossing or for dust to prevent ingress, it requires it that you have to take it off to get into the vehicle. So the one with the yellow arrow there, you have to unclip all of it and it hangs down. You can take it off to make it look nice, but you have to take it off to get into the vehicle. I did a walk around with a gas inspector at a show, and all of the ones on the right with the red cross, he made them remove it on the show, and he also spoke to a few people at the show and said, you know, you can't do this. I told you last year, why are you still doing it? So please go to your members, go to your the people who design these and tell them that it must be removable. It goes on to say that if you are going to use an ingress cover for dust or water, you also need to have a carbon monoxide detector fitted. I'm a little unclear on whether these are the 10-year battery or not. The only ones I've found do have a 10-year battery, and that makes sense to me that they would be the ones that we'd be using. Any questions or comments on that? No.
Looks all fine.
There's a safety alert on this configuration also. It relates to pipes not fixed on slide-out kitchens. In this example, you can see if the number one, that's the up the top there, if you can see my mouse, that goes to the gas valve. Number two is a securing piece for the cooker. Number three is the connection with the tail, with the pigtail. Number four is where it goes to the hose. It has no fixing to hold it still. So there is a safety alert that says that this is flat out not lawful. They have had failures of the gas valve. Gas valve, which you can't see, but it's at point number one. So with the pipe flopping around, the gas valve has fatigued and broken, and you have a gas leak all the time. If you want to see what that looks like, PGI safety alert number 113 V1. I have seen a pipe, a couple of pipes, a couple of times secured with cable ties. Cable ties aren't an acceptable method for securing a gas pipe. Bit of a giveaway that they're called cable ties.
Before you proceed, Bill, we've got a question from Graham. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Anne. Thanks, Bill.
Hey, Graham.
Just on that appliance, which part of the plumbing train there is included with the appliance, and which was put in by the gas fitter?
The appliance is included up to point number 3. So he's put in a copper pigtail and connected it to a hose.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I have seen people put cable ties around the securing point at number 2, but cable ties, it's over a sharp edge. It's just not acceptable. And I have seen those come out.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Before we move on, I'm just going back one step to the ventilation covers. Jason's made a comment that we see a lot of products with the studs in place with no cover actually present. So that's, I guess, a trick to watch out for, that potentially that vent opening is going to be covered, even if the cover isn't in place for the purpose of the exhibition of the vehicle.
I just do the right thing.
The fact that the studs are there would suggest that it can be covered and therefore it should have the features required for the cover being in place would be the way I would address that situation.
So if you see the yellow arrow there, there's actually a sail track, and there's a bead in that cover that slides down into the sail track, so you can lift the whole lot off. But if it's going back on, it goes back on with it inserted into the sail track. It's very effective, and it has been accepted by the regulators.
Thank you.
I live to give. This is a really tough one. There has been a fire inside a caravan. It was about a year and a half ago, and it was from a barbecue that was running inside the structure, inside the boot. The GTRC have advised me that they don't consider, and I haven't checked every state, but they don't consider the length of the hose to be an acceptable method of preventing connection, because a customer can just simply get a big hose and stick it on. There are some manufacturers that have worked out a mechanism for preventing the barbecue being pushed in with the hose connected, and that's the sentiment of the clause. On this example, was at a show and the hose was long enough to actually fit onto the bayonet and close and run, which is an unacceptable method of isolation. You could do it with a micro switch. You could do it with all sorts of things, but I would say most of the ones I've looked at don't really comply. Now, this was pointed out to me at a recent show by an inspector who said that when you put louvers in a gas locker, either at the front or the back, it extends the controlled area. It used to be called the hazardous zone. It extends the controlled area, and they consider the controlled area starts from the edge of the louver. So in this flat graphic, you have the louver, you have 500 above, 500 out, and then down at an angle of about 67 degrees to 1060. And that encompasses the flue of the appliance. Now, in real life, it looks like this. And this is a bit of a tricky one too. So 500 out, 500 across, 500 up, it takes in the flue of that water heater. When the gas fitter that did this said, well, when I installed the appliance, there was no door on it. Leaves us in a bit of a tricky situation. An appliance shall not be installed in a location where it may ignite flammable vapours or materials or chemicals may combine with combustion, and goes on. That's in section 2, and section 2 of the code is the essential safety items. So it's saying no matter what you do, you can't have something that makes it unsafe. And as I said, the gas technical regulator considers once that is closed, that would be way too close. I would be concerned in any case because you're relying on the customer to keep the door closed. But that wasn't pointed out to me. However, I consider that to be too close to the opening and should not have been put there. Any questions on that, ladies and gentlemen? I know this is, labels just don't seem that important sometimes, but they are all specified in the code. I have found what happens very often is that that the last thing to go on in the vehicle is the labels. And sometimes the person who's doing the final inspection of the vehicle looking for quality hasn't had that on their checklist, so there've been labels missing. The labels are available from RVMAP. They're in the catalogue. Some people make them themselves. That's fine. You do need to recognise that the font and the colour and the size are all prescribed in the gas code. Is it a big problem? Probably not. Is it unlawful? Absolutely yes. It would be very, very good if you could include in your checklist that all the labels are there. A lot of people use the skylight as a vent, and for the most part they are sufficient. However, not every skylight has ventilation. If you are going to use it as a vent, claim it as part of your top end ventilation and put a sticker on it. You do need to have, and I would suggest if it ain't in writing, it doesn't exist. You do need to have the calculation for that ventilation from the manufacturer. And if they can't supply that, you should think twice about whether that you're going to have to add a vent as well. Small vents are small skylights are generally between 120 and 150 centimetres squared, which is way big enough, but not all of them have it. This is a one that was recently found, and it's the pipe is the shut off to the bayonet, and it has about, I suppose, 12 to 1500 unsupported. It's not supported where it goes under the chassis. It's not supported where it goes to the bayonet, and it's got a shock valve in the middle of it. It way exceeds the maximum fixing of 600. Arguably, it would also fall out of step with the requirement for a fixing within 150 of a fitting. But whatever it is, when I grabbed hold of the pipe and shook it, you had about 150 to 250 mil movement on the pipe. That's a very optimistic way of fixing it, if I can put it that way. Has been noted in one walk around I did with an inspector, but it's certainly, I think, a point of failure that we should be checking. Flues next to openings. I did see one vehicle at a show that had a sign saying "keep closed when water heater is in use." When I opened the door, it didn't look sealed. A warning label is not an acceptable alternative to the requirement, and the requirement is the flue has to be 300 from an opening. On this one where you see 230 flue to opening, when I looked inside that tunnel boot, the tunnel boot was not sealed. Those things have definitely been picked up by inspectors at shows. So if you are going to be close to a tunnel boot, you do need to ensure that the whole tunnel boot is sealed. This is a lead into some performance areas, but I have had more than one comment that that's not my problem, that's the gas fitter. But I pulled this straight from the ACCC website, and it says under Australian consumer law, the caravan manufacturer is generally responsible for work done by their contractors, because consumer guarantee laws mean the whole product, including installed systems, must be fit for purpose. In their document, the ACCC also stated in clause 3.3.1, the consumer guarantee provides that products must be of acceptable quality, and that means goods should be safe, lasting with no faults, look acceptable, and do all the things that you would normally expect them to do. We're always under scrutiny, rightly or wrongly, and safety is always the priority. But I have had comment by some technical regulators that it's not the gas fitters' fault. It's the manufacturer, the owner of a business is required to know the law. And people have said this is the gas fitter's responsibility. How am I expected to know? Australian law has a clause called ignorata juris non excusat, which means ignorance of the law is not a defence in court. So I would encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, to put some pressure on your gas fitters, get them to explain the law, ensure that you have a code book, and RV members, you would all be aware that you have access to the code through your subscription to the Caravan Industry Association Australia. That leads us into pipe sizing, and pipe sizing is on here because the technical regulator last year called me up during winter and said I've had multiple people saying their appliances stop when they're up close to the snow, and we've determined that it's the pipe run is too small. In 5601.2 in Appendix C, there's a chart, and it's estimated pipe size based on a combination on the combined megajoules of the appliances. Now, megajoules is used in Australia. It's not used everywhere. Some places call it kilowatts, joules. We call it megajoules per hour. From memory, I think a megajoule is 0.233 of a kilowatt, something of that nature. But all in Australia, all your appliances will have the megajoules of that appliance marked on the appliance label on the data plate. So the chart in Appendix C is calculating the pipe wall friction of a straight run without reference to cylinder size. Come back to cylinder size. It's a straight run with a nominal pressure of 3 kPa, inclusive of a 0.25 kPa drop, which is the maximum allowed. And the chart, I think, is not helpful because it uses diameter nominal, which is the French ISO rating for the outside of a pipe. I think it would be a lot better if they just said it's a 3/8 or it's a 5/16 or if it's a 1/2 inch. But maybe I'm just old. Well, I am old. The chart does not take into consideration the cylinder size or the megajoule capacity of the cylinder. And just as a side note, the capacity of a 9 kilogram cylinder is affected by how full it is and how hot it is or cold. Propane boils at -42, butane boils at about -5. At any one time, you have a certain amount of megajoules available. Elgas say it's around 22 megajoules. My friends at Gas Energy Australia, and I thank them if they're on the call, calculated it to be about 40 megajoules an hour available at any one time. The GTRC told me I could use 50 to 60 as a reference. I'm going to use 50 to 60 because it's bigger. but I've also got a real life example which I'll show shortly. So from the chart, our DN8 is 7.92 millimetres with a pressure drop calculated at 0.25 kPa. At 4 metres, you only have 28 megajoules available. You can see that marked in yellow there. So 5/16 pipe, 28 megajoules at 4 metres. After that, your appliances are going to start faulting out. 3/8 pipe, which is DN10, 9.52, gives you 44 megajoules at 4 metres. 44 megajoules is about the size of the smaller, more energy efficient continuous hot water services. So the continuous water heaters go from about 45 up to 65. So at 44, at 4 metres, you'd only have about 44 megajoules available to you. 1/2-inch pipe, 100 megajoules at 4 metres. Any questions on that? So this is a real life example. The person concerned, very good gas fitter, did a test. They had a bayonet fitting, they had a medium-sized cooker, they had a fridge, they had a gas heater, and they had a hot water service. And the hot water service was about 8 metres. Hamburger with the lot is what he called it. So when he turned everything on, he found that he only had 1.6 kPa at the test point on the last hot water service. So the test is 5.1.2. You turn everything on and run them flat out, and you take test measurements at the test points on the appliances to see what it is. And his was 1.6 kPa instead of 2.75. So the likely effect of that on the cooker is you get a low flame. Gas heater, you'd have unreliable restarting. Refrigerator would probably fault out, and your hot water service would give you low temperatures. The solution: he ran a 1/2-inch pipe as the main run, and then he could increase some sizes. So with a 1/2-inch pipe, he was running a total of 77 megajoules, and he had 40 left up the spout. Could run 117 at that distance. So he was able to use a slide kitchen, a bayonet, a hot water service, but moved to the front of the vehicle, medium-sized cooker, fridge and heater, and it worked fine. He had no pressure drop. Taking it back to the chart, Appendix C includes methods of calculation, many of them. I find them very clunky, and I think for not a very complex situation like a caravan, I prefer to use the chart. This is an adaptation of the chart. It doesn't look exactly like this. It doesn't have the 1/4-inch, 5/16, 3/8, 1/2-inch. It uses DN6, DN8, DN10, DN15. But if we have a look there, we've got one hot water service running at 45 megajoules. It's a 4-metre run, and it doesn't give you any wriggle room. If you see on the chart, there's a red circle. It tells us that at 13.5 feet, 4 metres, you've got 44 megajoules available before you start losing pressure. If you start adding things to it, if we, for instance, used a small continuous, a small cooktop and a refrigerator, we'd go up to 67 megajoules, which you can see just there where my cursor is. And then to achieve that, we'd only be able to have a 2-metre run. 2 metres, 3/8 pipe, 66 megajoules. The test is validate the design with 5.1.2. All appliances in operation, maximum pressure drop across the piping shall not exceed 0.25 kPa of nominal burner pressure. My voice is failing me, excuse me. Okay. You will there see the circle has gone to 78 megajoules, and that's using a 1/2 inch pipe. If we increase the pipe to a 1/2 inch main run, you've got plenty enough to run those big appliances. So available 77 megajoules at 8 metres. And if you can see beside that, 93 at 6 metres, 117 at 4 metres. That should be well enough. We're still ignoring whether the cylinder will cope. It's going to be affected by temperature, but the pipe run calculated gives us enough. If we moved it, I've just said that, if we move it to 4 metres, 1/2 inch pipe, we've got 117 megajoules available against a requirement of 112. And we could increase the size of the hot water service, going from a small 45 continuous to a 60 megajoule plus continuous. If we go back to the to a small not a small, if we go back to a storage heater, they're between 7 and 10 megajoules, and on a 3/8 pipe you'd be able to go to about 5 metres with that combination of a hot water service, a cooker, a fridge. I've got these things in Excel. It's not hard to do. I believe God runs the universe on Excel. And from a design point of view, I suggest that this is the next step. The GTRC, when this came out, I said, can we have some space to present this to the industry and just evangelise? And they said, yeah, we'll do nothing, just talk to the industry. So at the moment we're in that part where they will at some stage start looking at this, but at the moment, unless there's a complaint from a consumer, that's going to come during winter if it comes at all, we're pretty safe. I guess I would add at this point, if you're sending vehicles to New Zealand, bear in mind that you have a gas mixture. Universal gas is roughly 60% propane and 40% butane. If you go down in the cold part of New Zealand and you do hit the 0 mark, your propane is going to boil and your butane is not. So you could end up with 40% of your cylinder left, which is pure butane, which is not going to start any appliances because it won't boil under 5 degrees, minus 5 degrees. Store that somewhere in the back of your mind. Speaking to my New Zealand colleagues, they did say that they didn't have examples of that. Don't know where that really leaves us other than probably need to have that in consideration if we're selling it to the bottom part of New Zealand. Mm-hmm. Any questions or comments on that, ladies and gentlemen?
Perhaps I'll suggest we've done a fair whack there on pipe size. Does anyone have any questions on that at first? And then we have a couple of others on the chat that we'll come back to. Graham, go ahead.
It might be, I guess what I observe is who's doing the pipe sizing. So in a lot of instances, it's the manufacturer or the designers doing the pipe sizing. and then you haven't got the gas fitter involved at that stage.
Correct.
So, and it's kind of happening a bit backwards where gas fitters might not have input or even check the pipe sizing. So that's a bit of where I see that happening backwards. I don't know if anyone on the call is willing to offer up how they arrange it and how people might better address this, because it's definitely a widespread issue.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I've noted the same thing. I've gone to a few gas plumbers and said this is, presented basically this. Some have taken it on board, some don't like me anyway. So it's a difficult one because it affects a lot of people, but often it's not the gas fitter's decision. And gas fitters also quite possibly given a fixed price for a vehicle. There's all sorts of crunch points, all sorts of conflicts in that. And it's a matter for discussion and education, Graham, that you and I have talked about that already.
I think it's also one of those areas that highlights the nature of this being a bit of a team exercise between the gas fitter and the vehicle designers and manufacturers. So we all need to know what is required and how to achieve compliance. Clinton, are you able to get on and perhaps clarify your comment from the chat?
Sure, sorry, I pressed the wrong button there.
Yeah, all good. Sorry, mate.
So I understand the steering of this is really pointed towards, new builds and that sort of thing. But the reality around it is that new builds make a really, really small portion of the total number of caravans on roads in Australia. So what we see is, as a repairer, the removal of the gas componentry in our apprenticeships and training I'm gas qualified with my business, but for us to repair these things and flat out to get plumbers that are domestic based who have a gas qualification to do the work on the vans, it really is, most of that stuff's the stuff that we have to uninstall because it's all done with domestic fittings. There's no knowledge. So we see a real opportunity to get qualifications across people who actually are in the industry and are touching caravans which are not being investigated by anybody really, except by the people that pull them up on the side of the road. It's really, that's a huge gap. Like, we see 1,000 caravans a year where we are now. And I would say, you guys talk about, high 80s and stuff not being compliant to ADRs and stuff. I would say that, of gas, probably maybe 50% of them are compliant now.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate comment, Clinton. There's a whole bunch of things that are not compliant, and it's not hard to find them if you're walking around. It's not hard to find the ones that are not compliant, very sadly. There's also the people, I'm of the opinion that the Part 2 component of the gas fitting license is it's not long enough, it's not detailed enough. I would prefer that there was a standalone Part 2 plumbing license, but I can't see that happening. But there is sometimes a sharing of ignorance. And we were talking about this just the other day, that a lot of changeovers, people will go, well, I would like a continuous hot water service. My storage has thrown a leg out of bed. I wouldn't mind one of those newfangled instantaneous, but may not run properly.
I think going back to that question of qualifications and availability of gas fitters, it's certainly a challenge that's recognised pretty much across the industry. But not one that we're necessarily going to be able to fix quickly. And although there's some good work going on in that space, again, I think the more that we can know, even as unlicensed people, still helps us to build vehicles that are more compliant. So while it's not, we can't claim any qualified capability to sign off stuff, that doesn't mean we can't know what is required and help with getting it across the line. So I guess that's part of where we're coming from here as well, that in that absence of some of the qualified people, we can still do what we can do to help things along.
And lobbying is part of that, and we are
definitely, and that is happening, and some of that work is underway to try and look at what could be done in the sort of what you call it, licensing space. I'd like to go back to a question from Redline on a different topic of going back to the flu distances, and I hope I've got this right. Please, guys, jump on and correct me if I'm wrong, but talking about a 500 millimetre distance for a natural draft flue compared to 300 millimetres for a power assisted flue. Is that?
I think that's part one.
Okay, so perhaps what this highlights is the part two standard that we use, 5601.2, does have some differences in what it applies.
Yeah, Redline guys, what know you well, trustworthy people. What is that a specific that I need to look up and come back to you for? I'll research that, see if there's something I can find. But
sorry, you got me.
Yeah, we've got you now. Cheers.
Yeah, Ripper, sorry about that. Yeah, it's just in regards to the tunnel boot question that was earlier, and just distances in general to openings and other flues as well. To our understanding, it was 500 mil for natural draft and 300 mil for power flues. So yeah, if we can get an answer on that, that'd be great, because that actually comes up quite a bit with the lack of room we have externally. So
yeah, pretty confident we're 300, but I'll double.
We'll take that on notice and put a note out when we distribute the PowerPoint slides to you all. We'll add a note about the clause relating to that, just to clarify on that one. Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah, Ripper, really appreciate it.
Awesome. Great.
Cheers.
Do we have any other questions? It's sounding like we've stunned you into silence, or you've all taken that on board and become experts. So well done.
Might be some specific questions up on those emails.
Yeah, so a couple of things on our contact details are up on that slide at the moment, and as we said, will be provided in the slides afterwards to those of you who have attended. Please feel free to email us. If it's a complicated one, go to Bill, because he will probably know the answer. But also you have the RVMAP team address there and my own personal one. So feel free to hit any of us up or talk to your state association contacts, and they'll work with us as necessary to find you an answer. We want to make this an ongoing conversation to work with everybody to try and improve our collective knowledge on all the compliance matters relating to 5601.2. Thank you for that question. I'll come back to it in a sec. The other thing I wanted to highlight was our Gas Ready website. Some of you might have already discovered this, rvgasready.com.au. We will be doing a progressive update of that in the weeks, possibly months coming, with the information we've presented today. So keep an eye on it, because it will be updating. And that is another good resource if you've got questions about what to do in certain installations. Thanks, Graham. There's the link in the chat for those of you who'd like to hop on there now. Chris and Jason had a question about the barbecue hose, asking if the barbecue hose is fitted with a saddle, would that be adequate to stop the cooker being stowed?
It would certainly be an argument. I'm not sure if there are regulations surrounding saddles on hoses. I've looked for that. A hose is primarily required to be flexible and movable. and not really designed to be clamped. I think there'd be an argument, but I, as I said, I've looked for regulations surrounding hoses, and the code is silent on whether you can clamp them. Makes perfect sense. Not sure it would be accepted.
Yep. Okay, so I guess there's a risk there of if you compromise the hose by clamping it, you might introduce a new risk. So yes, but the concept of something that prevents the cooker being stowed in some sort of physical way is I guess heading down the right track.
Yeah. Now there are plastic saddles. I think if I was going to do it, it'd be with a plastic saddle. But I can't see anywhere in the code. I haven't been able to find anywhere that says you can or cannot put a saddle on a hose. Doesn't feel great to me, but nobody has said don't.
All right. So as you can see, we very quickly get into some grey areas here as we try to navigate this. So this is why I think these conversations are important, and we want to, I guess, see this as a kick-off of some of these more questions. And unfortunately, some of it we will only discover as we go forwards and see how the regulators and their inspectors react to what we put forward.
I will give you an anecdote from Bill Thiel at the age of 21. I was managing a quite large workshop for vacuum cleaner repair. And for those of you who remember when dinosaurs roamed the earth, there was a petrol shortage in the late 70s. And I had more than one person come in with a vacuum cleaner that they tried to vacuum petrol out of cars, which destroyed every elastomer in the vacuum cleaner. But miraculously, nobody blew themselves up because it got the petrol rather than the vapour. The company I worked for considered putting in the instructions not to vacuum petrol out of tanks. Some things just seem obvious, and it doesn't seem right to put everything in a code like don't vacuum petrol out of your car tank, or if you're going to use a saddle on a hose, use the right sort. It's a really tricky one, the saddles on the hoses. As I said, I can't find a code that forbids it, but I can't see one that authorises it either.
And I think that anecdote, Julie, highlights the stupidity of some of our users, that while that's not our fault, it is something we have to consider in putting it out there on our products. Are there any more questions? We're doing very well for time. We're just about right on the knocker, but I don't want to stifle the chance for people to ask any last questions before we tune out. I'm not seeing anyone wave their hands, so thanks, James, for the comment. I think we might wind it up there. Please note the email addresses. If you want to get in touch with us, as I said, we want to make this a really open conversation. Please don't feel that you can't ask anything, even if you think it's a stupid question. Bill's really good at them because I ask him them all the time. So please, don't be shy. You know where to find us, and we hope that if there are any particular challenges that you don't want to talk about publicly, that we can engage on those too offline if that's necessary. Keep an eye on the website going forward, and on our technical bulletins there will be some follow-up material coming in due course. And as I've said, we will provide all attendees with a copy of the presentation slides so that you can get to those links and have a closer look at some of those diagrams, and the studies of pipe size particularly, I think, bear another look. So thank you all for your time. Thank you, Bill, for your expertise, and we hope you have a terrific rest of the day.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. See you later.
Thank you all.